They say when you bury your elders, you bury a library. But sometimes, they don't stay buried. I was standing under the wild fig tree, the one by the red clay road in KwaZulu-Natal, watching the wind stir the dry grass around my grandmother's grave. I could hear the mourners leaving, their voices fading, their feet crunching over stones as they made their way back to their taxis. But I stayed. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't sad, but because something in the air that day felt heavier than grief. Like the sky was holding its breath, waiting for me to notice what I was about to carry. I didn't grow up with stories of warriors and spirits. My mother moved us to Durban, away from the village, away from the stories, away from the drums. She wanted me to be modern, to get an education, to leave the old ways behind. But when the phone rang that morning, telling me Gogo had died in her sleep, I felt something shift in me. Like a drumbeat deep in my chest. I thought it was grief. It wasn't. When I returned home for the funeral, the house smelled of dust, wood smoke, and old sorghum beer. The kind of scent that clings to you, reminding you of who you are even when you want to forget. They told me I would be staying in her room for the night, that it was tradition, that it would protect the spirit on its journey. But nobody told me about the drum under her bed. That night, the moon was sharp, hanging low, bright enough to cast shadows through the window. I lay on her thin mattress, pulling the blanket around me, listening to the creaks of the old wooden beams and the wind brushing the walls like a whisper. That's when I heard it. At first, I thought it was my heart. But it was slower, deeper. Boom. A pause. Boom. I sat up, breath catching in my throat. The sound was coming from under the bed. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, just the wind, a rat, the old wood shifting. But the sound came again. Boom. Boom. I slid off the bed, heart pounding, the cold mud floor biting at my bare feet. I knelt, hesitating before lifting the faded bed cover. And there it was. A drum. Carved from dark wood, its surface etched with patterns I didn't recognize, cowrie shells ringing the top, catching the moonlight like tiny watchful eyes. I didn't want to touch it. But I couldn't look away. My hand reached out, almost on its own, and as my fingers brushed the drum surface, it was warm. Almost alive. The moment I touched it, a cold wind swept through the room, blowing out the candle, leaving me in darkness. And then, I heard a voice. It was a man's voice, deep, like the rumble of thunder far away. Themba. I froze. My breath misted in the darkness, even though the air was warm. You have awakened me. I don't remember falling asleep. But I remember the dreams. Dreams of fire. Of warriors dancing around flames, faces painted, spears raised, voices chanting in a language I barely understood, but my blood recognized. And in the middle of them stood a man, tall, strong, draped in lion skin, his eyes dark and knowing. He looked at me. Blood calls to blood. When I woke up, the drum was beside me on the bed, resting against my leg, as if it had always belonged there. I tried to leave it behind the next morning, tried to walk away, get back on the bus to Durban. But as I stood at the door, the drum beat once, a single, deep sound that vibrated through the floor, up through my legs, into my bones. I turned around. And I realized. I couldn't leave. They say when you bury your elders, you bury a library. But sometimes, the stories dig themselves back out. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is right now in your country. Drop it in the comments below. And if you've ever felt like your ancestors are trying to reach you. If you've ever felt a drum beating inside your chest that you couldn't ignore. You're not alone. Don't forget to like this story, subscribe for more, and share it with someone who still believes that blood remembers, even when we don't. I tried to pretend it wasn't happening. That morning, I packed my bag, folded the clothes Gogo left for me, and tied the plastic handles tight like I was closing off this chapter of my life for good. I told myself I was going back to Durban, back to Wi-Fi, office noise, friends, street lights, and taxis that smelled of cheap perfume. Back to a life that didn't have dreams of warriors and the smell of burning grass. But the drum didn't care. As I stepped toward the door, the air shifted, thickening like honey in my lungs. The room darkened, even though the morning sun was pouring through the cracked window. Then it came. Boom. A single beat. Deep enough to vibrate the metal bed frame. I froze, keys in my hand, bag on my shoulder. Boom. Boom. I turned. The drum was still under the bed, but it paused with each beat, like a living thing breathing in the shadows. And then I heard him again. You cannot leave. His voice was not angry. It was tired. Heavy with something I could not name. I tried to leave anyway. Outside, the road felt endless, the dirt hot under my shoes, the horizon shimmering with heat. Every step felt like I was walking against an invisible wind, like the earth itself wanted me to turn back. Halfway to the taxi stop, I heard it. Not in my ears, but in my chest. Boom. 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 It was my heartbeat. No. It was the drum. They were the same now. I stopped, sweat sliding down my back, breath catching. Finish what I could not. I turned around. And that's when I saw him. A figure standing by the fig tree, watching me. Lion skin draped over his shoulders, spear in hand, eyes dark as storm clouds. My grandfather. I didn't remember running, but I was back in the house, the door slamming behind me, heart pounding so hard I thought it my best. I dropped to the floor, pressing my back against the door, staring at the bed where the drum sat silently, as if nothing had happened. As if it wasn't the reason my world was breaking open. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. Standing in fire. Standing in rain. Standing on a field of blood and grass. Always looking at me. Blood calls to blood. I tried to scream, but in the dream, no sound came out. I tried to run, but the earth pulled at my feet like mud. And the drum kept beating. Faster. Louder. Until I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, the moonlight cutting across the room like a blade. The drum was beside me again. Closer than before. Waiting. I picked it up, hands trembling, feeling the warmth in the wood, the texture of the carved patterns, the smoothness of the cowrie shells. I held it to my chest, hoping, foolishly, that it would stop. It didn't. Instead, it beat once. Boom. And in that single beat, memories that weren't mine flooded through me. A village burning under a moonless sky. Children crying. Women screaming. Men shouting, fighting, dying. Betrayal. A brother leading strangers through the darkness, pointing, whispering, taking blood payment in cattle and coins. And in the center of it all, my grandfather, bleeding, his eyes full of betrayal, lifting the drum one last time as the spear pierced his side. I fell to the floor, gasping, the vision tearing away from me like a wave receding from the shore. I lay there, the drum heavy on my chest, tears I didn't understand streaming down my face. In the silence that followed, I heard his voice, softer now. You must finish it. I stayed on the floor until the rooster crowed, dawn breaking through the small window, painting the room in pale gold. I sat up slowly, my body aching, the drum still in my hands. I looked at it, and for the first time, I didn't see an object. I saw a promise. A burden. A calling. I realized then that this drum was not just haunted. It was alive. And it wanted something from me. Something I wasn't ready to give. But it was too late. Because once you hear the call of the drum, you can never unhear it. Once you feel your ancestors reaching for you, you can never turn away. If you're still here, if you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is there. I want to know who is brave enough to listen to this when the night is heavy, and the world is quiet enough for your ancestors to whisper. And if you've ever felt something calling you back to where you came from, drop a comment below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe, so you won't miss what happens next. Because this story, it's only just beginning. It started with dreams. But it didn't stay there. At first, it was just fragments, scattered images that clung to me like morning mist. A spear glinting under moonlight. The smell of blood on dry grass. Men in war paint, their eyes reflecting fire. And always, the drum. Booming softly. Steady. Calling. I tried to fight it. Tried to bury myself in chores around the house, fixing the broken fence, sweeping the red dust off the floors, boiling maize for breakfast. But every moment of silence felt like the air was holding its breath, waiting for the drum to speak. And it did. One afternoon, I was cleaning Gogo's room, folding her faded dresses, pressing them to my face to catch her scent, when I heard it. Boom. Boom. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to make my hands freeze. I turned slowly, eyes falling on the drum where it sat in the corner, cowrie shells winking in the dusty light. I can't do this, I whispered. But the drum didn't care. It paused again, a single beat, vibrating through the wooden floor, through my feet, up into my chest. And then I was somewhere else. I was standing in a craw, the air thick with smoke, the ground littered with broken shields and blood. I saw my grandfather there, standing tall, his lion skin around his shoulders, spear in hand, eyes like storms. And I saw the man beside him. His brother. They looked alike, but where my grandfather's eyes were strong, his brother's were slippery, always darting away, calculating. They were speaking, but I couldn't hear the words, only the drum. Boom. 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 Then the brother turned, leading strangers through the gates, men with pale faces and rifles, pointing toward my grandfather. And the air split with screams. I snapped back, gasping, dropping the dress I had been folding, stumbling backward until I hit the wall. My hands were shaking. I pressed them to my face, feeling the tears, the sweat, the fear. I didn't want this. I didn't want to see these things. But that night, the dreams came again, sharper now, clearer, like I was living them. I was running through tall grass, breath burning in my lungs, the ground soft and warm under my bare feet. Behind me, I heard the drum. Ahead of me, the fig tree, standing alone, its branches reaching for the sky. My grandfather stood there, looking at me. Blood calls to blood, Themba. I shook my head, tears spilling down my face. I don't want this, I whispered. His eyes softened, but he didn't move. Neither did I. I woke up screaming, clutching the drum to my chest, its warmth seeping into my skin. I sat there in the dark, rocking back and forth, trying to calm my breathing, the drum's steady pulse matching my own. And I realized it wasn't just showing me the past. It reminding me that betrayal runs deep. That blood remembers, even when we try to forget. I started asking questions around the village. Whispers from the elders, careful looks from the neighbors, everyone too afraid to speak loudly. They told me pieces, broken fragments of a story I wasn't supposed to know. That my grandfather's brother had sold out the village, let strangers in under the cover of darkness, took cattle and gold in exchange for land. That the land the lodge now sits on was taken that night, soaked in blood and betrayal. That my grandfather died with a spear in his back, holding the drum, trying to call the warriors to rise, but it was too late. I felt anger then. A deep, burning anger that scared me. Because I could feel it echoing in the drum. Every time I touched it, the anger paused back at me, a promise, a hunger. Finish what I could not. One evening, I found myself sitting by the fig tree, the drum in my lap, the sun setting, painting the sky in deep reds and oranges. I didn't plan to play it. But my hands moved on their own, fingers tapping out a rhythm I didn't know I knew. Boom. Tap. Boom. Tap tap. The wind picked up, swirling around me, the branches of the fig tree rustling like whispers. And then I saw them. Shadows moving in the twilight, figures with spears and painted faces, walking among the grass, silent, watching me. I stopped playing, breath caught in my throat. They faded, but the air felt thick, charged, like lightning was about to strike. I pressed my hand to the drum, feeling it warm under my palm. And I whispered, "What do you want from me?" The wind died, the word holding its breath. And then, so softly I almost didn't hear it, justice. That night, I lay in bed, the drum beside me, staring at the ceiling as the moonlight crawled across the room. I couldn't sleep. Because I knew. This wasn't just about a drum. It was about a promise that had been broken. A debt that was owed. And blood that demanded remembrance. If you're still here, if you're still listening, let me know where you're watching from, and what time it is there. Tell me if you believe that blood remembers, even when we don't. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe, so you can follow me as I discover what the drum truly wants from me. Because this story is far from over. There's a moment when the past and the present blur. When you stand in a place, and the air feels thicker, like it's carrying voices only you can hear. That's how it felt when I found the land. It started with a name, whispered by one of the elders who thought I was asleep during a prayer gathering. Ngwenya Lodge. The place tourists go to experience Zulu culture. They dance in fake leopard skins, drink overpriced beer under fairy lights, take photos next to statues of warriors they don't understand. The place they laugh while standing on bones. I didn't want to go. But the drum did. I tried to leave it behind that morning, locking it in the old storage room, tying the door shut with rope. I told myself I would just go see. Just look. But as I stepped out, I heard it. A single, heavy beat. Boom. And I felt it in my chest, deep, like it was vibrating inside my bones. The road to Ngwenya Lodge was long, red dust rising behind me with every step. The sky was overcast, clouds hanging low, heavy with the promise of rain. As I got closer, I started to see the signs. Cultural experience. Authentic Zulu village. Warrior dance show every night. The posters showed smiling faces in beadwork, spears raised in celebration. They didn't show the graves under the soil. They didn't show betrayal. When I reached the gates, I froze. There, under the painted sign, was the fig tree. Older now, branches heavy, roots thick and twisting into the earth. The same tree from my dreams. The same tree where I saw my grandfather fall. I stepped forward, my breath catching, the wind picking up around me, carrying the smell of rain and dust. I reached out, touching the rough bark, closing my eyes. And I was there again. Flames licking at huts. Screams in the darkness. Men with rifles shouting in a language I didn't understand. My grandfather, standing under this tree, holding the drum, blood soaking his lion's skin, eyes burning with betrayal. And his brother, standing across from him, turning away, leading the strangers through the kraal. I opened my eyes, tears streaming down my face, the world spinning. The drum wasn't with me. But I could feel it. Beating. Calling. Demanding. I walked into the lodge, past the painted walls, past the smiling receptionist who handed me a brochure. She didn't see me. None of them did. It was like I was a ghost, moving through this place, seeing the faces of tourists laughing, drinking, taking photos in front of the warrior huts built for their entertainment. They didn't see the shadows. But I did. They were everywhere. Figures standing in the corners of the dance hall, by the fake fires, in the doorways of the huts. Silent, watching. Warriors, women holding babies, elders leaning on sticks. Their eyes followed me as I walked, their faces calm, but their eyes were full of something deeper. A waiting. A promise. As the sun began to set, the tourists gathered around the fire pit for the evening show. Drummers in bright costumes began to play rhythms that felt hollow, empty, like echoes of something they didn't understand. Dancers stomped their feet, smiling for cameras, spears lifted high under fairy lights. And under it all, I heard it. Another drum. Soft. Steady. Boom. 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 I turned. And there, standing at the edge of the light, was my grandfather. Lion skin draped over his shoulders. Spear in hand. Watching me. I felt my knees weaken, breath catching, tears blurring my vision. I tried to speak, but the words caught in my throat. He raised his hand, pointing to the ground under the fire pit where the tourists danced. And at that moment, I saw it. Blood soaking into the soil. Bones buried under the fire, under the laughter. And I understood. This was not a place of celebration. It was a grave. And they were dancing on it. I stumbled backward, clutching my chest as the drum's heartbeat grew louder in my mind. Boom. 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 I don't know how long I stood there, watching the shadows of my ancestors standing among the living, their eyes never leaving me. The dance ended, the tourists clapped, the drummers bowed, and the fire crackled on bones that had never found peace. I turned and walked away, the sky now dark, the first drops of rain falling, soaking into the red dust. And as I walked, the drum's voice came again, soft, but clear. Finish what I could not. That night, I lay in Gogo's room, the drum beside me, its warmth seeping into my skin as the storm raged outside. Lightning flashed, thunder roared, and the rain drummed on the roof, mixing with the beat inside the house. And I knew. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The land was calling for justice. And the drum would not stop until it was answered. If you're still here, if you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is there. Let me know if you believe the past can reach into the present, demanding to be heard. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, and subscribe, so you don't miss what comes next. Because the drum is still beating. And the story is far from over. Some say the dead have no power. That once the grave closes, that's the end. But I know now, it's not true. Because the dead remember. And sometimes, they wait. The rain had stopped, but the earth was still wet, red mud clinging to my shoes as I walked through the village the next morning. I couldn't sleep the night before. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. My ancestors. Standing in the rain. Watching me. Waiting. And the drum. Always the drum. Boom. 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 I needed answers. So I went to see the oldest man in the village, Boban Lovu, who everyone said was too old to speak, too blind to see. But when I stepped into his hut, the air thick with herbs and wood smoke, he turned his head, milky eyes finding me in the darkness. And he spoke. You carry the drum, don't you? I froze, breath catching, clutching the bag where the drum rested against my hip. I don't know what you mean, I whispered. His thin lips curved into a tired smile. You don't have to lie, Temba. Blood calls to blood. He told me the truth. The full truth. About the night my grandfather died. The men with rifles came, but they did not come alone. They came because they were led. By my grandfather's brother. Because he had made a promise for cattle, land, power. And the land they took was the land under Ngwenya Lodge. But it wasn't just the strangers who spilled blood that night. It was our own blood. And now, Boban Lovorast, that land is cursed. Because blood was taken, and justice was never given. He leaned closer, breath warm with the scent of herbs. The family that owns that land now, the ones who run the lodge, they are his descendants. I felt the world spin, the shadows in the hut pressing closer. They profit from the blood they spilled. And your ancestors cannot rest. I stumbled out of the hut, the morning light harsh, the air too thin in my lungs. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But all I could do was stand there, clutching the drum, feeling it pulsing against my hand. Boom. 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 That night, the dreams changed. They weren't just visions anymore. They were demands. I was standing under the fig tree, rain pouring, lightning splitting the sky. My grandfather stood before me, lion skin soaked, spear in hand. His eyes were not kind this time. They were hard, sharp as the spear he held. They took everything, he said, his voice like thunder. And you do nothing. I shook my head, tears mixing with the rain. What can I do? He raised the spear, pointing it toward the lodge in the distance, lights glowing under the storm. Justice. I woke up screaming, the drum in my hands, warm, pulsing, alive. I couldn't breathe, chest tight, sweat cold on my skin. I stumbled to the window, looking out across the dark fields toward the glow of Ngwenya Lodge in the distance. And I felt it. A pull. A hunger. A promise. The next day, I went. I walked the red road, past the thorn trees, past the graves, past the fig tree, until the gates of the lodge rose before me. Tourists were laughing, children running, music playing. They didn't see me as I walked through. But the shadows did. The ancestors did. They stood in the corners, silent, watching, waiting. I found the family. The descendants. They were standing near the fire pit, laughing with tourists, dressed in fine clothes, their faces smooth and carefree. I felt the drum in my bag, heavy, warm, pulsing. Boom. 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 And in that moment, I saw them as they truly were. Smiling faces hiding old blood. Soft hands that held wealth built on betrayal. Feet dancing on graves. My grandfather's voice came then, soft, but firm. Finish what I could not. I turned and walked away, the drum beating with every step. Because I knew the time was coming. The time when the drum would demand its price. And the ancestors would rise. That night, the dreams returned, stronger than ever. I saw the lodge burning, shadows dancing in the flames, warriors chanting, spears raised, the ancestors walking through the fire, their faces calm. And in the middle of it all, I stood, the drum in my hands, its beat matching the flames. Boom. 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 I woke with tears on my face, the dawn breaking, the air heavy. Because I knew. The drum would not stop. Until justice was done. If you're still here, still listening, tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is there. Tell me, do you believe the sins of the past can demand justice in the present? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video, and subscribe, so you don't miss what comes next. Because the drum is still beating. And the story is far from over. There's a line between fear and madness. And I think I crossed it the day the drum took its first sacrifice. I tried to resist it. Tried to pretend that I could still live a normal life, walk through the village, greet neighbors, laugh with children, sleep without waking up screaming. But the drum had other plans. And the ancestors were growing impatient. It started with Sizwe. He was my childhood friend, one of the few who still spoke to me after I returned. He would come by Gogo's house with maize, bring news from the village, laugh about the city life we both once knew. He told me to leave the drum alone. To let the dead bury the dead. Themba, this is not your fight, he said one afternoon, sitting on the steps, chewing on sugarcane. You're letting the past swallow you. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to pretend that he was right. But as he spoke, the drum inside the house began to beat. Soft, steady. Boom. 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 Sizwe didn't hear it. But I did. And in that moment, I saw the shadows standing behind him, ancestors watching, silent, their eyes hard. Justice. That night, Sizwe came back. Drunk, stumbling, shouting my name outside the window. Themba. Bring that cursed drum out here. Let me burn it, so you can be free. I begged him to leave. Go home, Sizwe. Please. But he wouldn't. He staggered to the door, pounding on it, screaming that I was cursed, that I was bringing death to the village. And then, the door opened. I didn't open it. It opened on its own. And there, in the darkness, the drum sat on the floor, cowrie shells glinting in the moonlight, the carvings glowing softly. Sizwe stared at it, his drunken anger turning to fear. What is that? The drum beat once. Boom. The air grew heavy, the shadows in the room deepening, the ancestors stepping forward, unseen by Sizwe, but clear to me. Leave it alone. I screamed, tears in my eyes. But Sizwe stepped forward, reaching for the drum, his hand shaking. I'll end this, he shouted. And then it happened. As his hand touched the drum, there was a flash of light, a crack of thunder so loud it shook the house. Sizwe's eyes widened, his mouth opening in a silent scream. And he fell. I rushed to him, grabbing his shoulders, shaking him, begging him to wake up. Sizwe. Please. Wake up. But his eyes stared past me, empty, his body cold. And the drum. The drum was warm. Alive. Beating softly. Boom. 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 The village gathered the next morning, whispers swirling like smoke. They said I was cursed. That I was a witch. That the drum had killed him. And maybe they were right. I tried to bury the drum, digging a hole under the fig tree, dropping it into the red earth, covering it with soil, pressing my hands against the ground, tears streaming down my face. Please, leave me alone, I whispered. But that night, as the wind howled and the moon rose high, I heard it. Under the floorboards. Boom. 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 I tore the boards up with my bare hands, dirt under my nails, splinters cutting my skin, blood dripping onto the ground. And there it was. The drum. Waiting. I fell to my knees, sobbing, clutching it to my chest. What do you want from me? I screamed into the darkness. And in the silence that followed, the ancestors stepped forward. They filled the room, shadows of warriors, mothers, elders, their eyes reflecting moonlight, their faces calm, but their eyes burning with something deeper. And my grandfather stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder. Justice, he said softly. Or we will never rest. The next morning, the village avoided me. Children were pulled away as I walked past. Doors closed as I approached. I was alone. Except for the drum. At night, I sat in the dark, the drum in my lap, its warmth seeping into me, its heartbeat matching mine. And I realized. This was not a curse. This was a promise. A debt that had to be paid. The land was calling for justice. And the drum would not stop until it was answered. Even if it meant blood. If you're still here, if you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is there. Tell me, do you believe that justice can demand blood when the world refuses to remember? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video, and subscribe, so you don't miss what comes next. Because the drum is still beating. And the story is far from over. They say the land forgets. That when the rains come, the blood washes away. That when the grass grows, the graves disappear. That when the sun rises, the screams fade into the morning air. They lied. Because the land remembers. And it called me. After Sizwi's death, the village turned cold. Eyes followed me wherever I went. Doors shut as I approached. Children were pulled away, their mothers whispering prayers. They said I was cursed. That the drum was a curse. But the drum was not the curse. The curse was what had been done to this land. And the drum was the reminder. At night, I could feel it. The soil itself breathing under my feet. The air heavy, tasting of iron. The wind carrying voices that only I could hear. Finish what we could not. I tried to resist. Tried to pray. Tried to drown the drum's beat with the sound of the radio, the hum of the fridge, the noise of the world. But at night, when the world went quiet, it was there. Boom. 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 One evening, I stood by the fig tree, the drum in my hands, the sunset painting the sky in blood and gold. I pressed my ear against the drum, tears slipping down my cheeks. And I heard them. The voices of the past. Crying. Screaming. Chanting. Praying. And beneath it all, the heartbeat of the land. Boom. 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 I walked toward Ngwenya Lodge. The grass was tall, brushing against my legs, whispering as I passed. Lightning flashed on the horizon, thunder rolling, the air electric. And with every step, the drum grew warmer, the beat stronger, matching the pounding in my chest. Boom. 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 When I reached the gates, I saw them. Shadows. Standing among the acacia trees, beside the fence, under the lodge lights. Silent. Watching. Warriors with spears. Mothers holding children. Elders leaning on staffs. Their eyes reflecting the stormlight. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Because I knew why they were here. Inside the lodge, laughter drifted through the air, tourists dancing around the fire, drinking beer, taking photos. They were dancing on graves. They didn't know. They didn't care. But the land remembered. And the drum was done waiting. I stepped forward, clutching the drum, my hands shaking, tears mixing with the rain that had begun to fall. Please, I whispered, my voice cracking. What do you want from me? The shadows stepped forward, circling the lodge, their eyes fixed on the fire where tourists danced. And the drum beat once, so loud it echoed through the trees. Boom. The fire flickered. The air grew cold. And the land moved. I watched as the earth cracked near the fire pit, steam rising, the flames dancing wildly as if caught by an invisible wind. The tourists screamed, stumbling back, dropping their drinks, falling over themselves as the ground shifted beneath them. The shadows moved through them, unseen, but felt. I saw it in their eyes. A sudden terror. A sudden knowing. The drum in my hands paused, warm, alive, vibrating with power that was not mine. And the shadows turned to me. Waiting. Expecting. And in that moment, I understood. The ancestors did not want me to destroy the living. They wanted the truth revealed. They wanted the land to be remembered for what it was. They wanted the betrayer uncovered. I stepped forward, raising the drum over my head, the rain soaking me, the lightning flashing. And I brought it down. Boom. The sound echoed across the field, through the trees, into the bones of the earth. And the land answered. The rain turned heavy, a downpour drumming on the roofs, the ground turning to mud. The fig tree swayed, branches whipping, leaves tearing into the air. And the earth cracked open, steam and smoke rising, the scent of blood and fire filling the air. The ancestors walked through the lodge grounds, unseen but felt, their presence heavy, undeniable. And the land spoke. Old bones rose from the mud, washed clean by the rain, pushed up by the earth that refused to keep them buried. Spears, beads, fragments of clay pots. And skulls. Dozens of skulls. The tourists fled, screaming, dropping cameras, sleeping in the mud, running for the gates. The owners of the lodge, the descendants of the betrayer, stood frozen, eyes wide, faces pale, staring at the bones rising from the ground. And in that moment, I saw fear in their eyes. Not of me, but of the truth. I stepped forward, the drum warm in my hands, the rain dripping from my hair, my clothes clinging to my skin. This land remembers, I said softly, my voice carrying through the storm. And it demands justice. The lightning struck the fig tree, splitting it down the middle, flames bursting, the fire mixing with the rain, smoke rising into the dark sky. And the drum beat once more. Boom. And the shadows were gone. The rain slowed, the wind calmed, and the world fell silent. The bones lay on the ground, washed clean, reminders of a betrayer that had refused to stay buried. And I knew. The ancestors had spoken. The land had been remembered. If you're still here, still listening, tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is there. Tell me, do you believe the land remembers, even when we try to forget? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video, and subscribe, so you don't miss what comes next. Because the drum is still beating. And the story is far from over. The rain washed the bones clean, but it did not wash the past away. If anything, it made it clearer. And the drum was done waiting. After the storm, the village was quiet. No laughter, no radios, no cattle bells. Just the hush of people who had seen something they could not explain. Something they could not deny. The bones lay under the fig tree, bleached and silent, but their presence was loud. Tourists stopped coming. The lodge was closed for investigation. But I knew the truth. The land had spoken. And the ancestors had risen. The villagers started watching me differently. Not with fear. Not with anger. But with something heavier. Expectation. Boban Lovu came to me one morning, leaning on his stick, eyes clouded but clear enough to see the path laid before me. You have stirred the land, Themba. The ancestors have woken. Now you must finish what you started. I shook my head, tears burning in my eyes. I didn't start this, I whispered. They did. But even as I said it, I felt the drum in my hands, warm, alive, pulsing with a heartbeat that was no longer just mine. Boom. 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 I knew what had to be done. The descendants of the betrayer's blood still held the deed to the land. They lived in the big house at the edge of the lodge, the one with the iron gates and the satellite dish. They were the ones who danced on graves, who sold pieces of the past to tourists, who built their wealth on bones. And they refused to see it. So I went to them. It was late afternoon when I stood at their gate, the drum strapped to my back, the sky heavy with clouds, the air thick with the scent of rain. I knocked. Once. Twice. 3 times. The door opened. And there he stood. David Ngwenya. Grandson of the brother who betrayed my grandfather. His face was soft, city-fed, eyes tired but sharp, hands that had never held a spear. But in his eyes, I saw fear. A fear that came not from me, but from the truth he had spent his life denying. What do you want? He asked, his voice unsteady. I stepped forward, the drum heavy on my shoulders. You know why I'm here. He tried to close the door, but the wind picked up, slamming it back open, rattling the windows, shaking the house. The drum beat softly. Boom. 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 You can't run from this, I said, my voice calm, tears slipping down my face. The land remembers. The ancestors remember. And now, you will remember too. Lightning flashed, thunder cracked, and the shadows of the ancestors stepped into the house, unseen but felt, their presence heavy, pressing. David stumbled back, clutching a table, his eyes wide, sweat on his forehead. Please. I didn't do anything, he cried. I stepped closer, the drum pulsing between us. Your blood did. Your family did. And you have profited from that blood while denying it. He fell to his knees, sobbing, shaking, the storm raging outside, the wind howling through the broken window. And the ancestors stood around us, silent, watching. What do you want from me? He whispered, his voice breaking. I knelt before him, placing the drum on the floor between us, the carvings glowing softly in the flickering light. Confess. Acknowledge what was done. Return the land to the people. The drum beat once. Boom. David's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed, the storm roaring, the wind swirling around us. And in that moment, I saw it. A vision. David standing under the fig tree, tears on his face, handing me a paper, a deed, his hands shaking. The ancestors standing around us, nodding, their eyes softening. The land quiet, the storm clearing. I blinked, and the vision was gone. David lay on the floor, breathing heavily, tears on his face. Okay, he whispered. Okay. I will do it. The storm began to come, the wind dying, the rain turning to a soft drizzle. The ancestors stepped back, fading into the shadows, their eyes still on us, but softer now. The drum in my hands was warm, calm, its beat steady. Boom. 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 The land was not healed. Not yet. But it was a start. The next morning, the village gathered. David stood beside me, pale, shaken, but resolute. And he read the truth aloud. How the land was taken. How blood was spilled. How his family profited from bonds and betrayal. And how he would return it. The villagers wept. Not with sadness. But with a grief that had waited too long to be spoken. And the ancestors stood among them, silent, watching, finally acknowledged. That night, I sat under the fig tree, the drum in my lap, the stars bright in the clear sky. For the first time in a long time, the drum was quiet. And I wept. Because the land had remembered. And now, so did we. If you're still here, still listening, tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is there. Tell me, do you believe that speaking the truth can heal the wounds of the past? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video, and subscribe, so you don't miss what comes next. Because while the drum is quiet now, the story is not yet over. You would think that returning the land would be enough. That confessing the truth would be enough. But the ancestors had waited too long. And the land had bled too deeply. To heal, it needed more. After David's confession, the village changed. The elders gathered, prayers were said, fires were lit at night, songs of the ancestors echoing through the fields. For the first time in years, children laughed again near the fig tree. But at night, the drum still beat. Boom. 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 Gogo came to me one morning, her back bent, her eyes sharp, the lines on her face deep with knowledge. Themba, she said softly, placing a hand on mine, the land is yours now. But it is not yet healed. I wanted to argue. To tell her I was tired. That I had given everything. But the drum was warm in my hands, pulsing softly, reminding me. Boom. 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 That night, I sat alone under the fig tree, the stars bright above me, the land quiet, waiting. The drum rested in my lap, its carvings glowing softly in the moonlight. And then, the vision came. I was standing in the crawl of the past. The huts burning. Children crying. Men with rifles shouting. And my grandfather, standing tall, the drum in his hands, his eyes on me. "Themba," he said, his voice like the wind, "you have done well. But one thing remains." I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. "I've given everything." His eyes softened, but his voice remained firm. "The land must be cleansed. The ancestors must be fed." I woke with the dawn, the vision burning in my mind, the drum warm against my chest. And I knew what I had to do. The elders gathered, the villagers surrounding the fig tree, the air thick with the scent of burning herbs. Children watched from their mothers' backs, eyes wide, silent. David stood beside me, pale but resolute. And the drum beat softly. Boom. 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 The elders spoke prayers, calling the names of those lost, those betrayed, those forgotten. They called the ancestors home. They asked for forgiveness. They asked for healing. And then, they turned to me. Gogo stepped forward, holding a clay bowl filled with milk and herbs. "Themba," she said softly, "you must call the drum." I lifted it, the wood warm, the carvings glowing, the cowrie shells clinking softly. And I beat it. Once. Twice. 3 times. Boom. 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 The air grew heavy, the wind rising, swirling dust around us, the leaves of the fig tree shaking, the ground vibrating under our feet. And the ancestors came. They stepped from the shadows, silent, powerful, their eyes on us. Warriors, mothers, elders. And my grandfather. His lion skin draped over his shoulders, the spear in his hand, his eyes calm. He nodded. "Pour it." I took the bowl from Gogo, stepping forward, pouring the milk and herbs onto the ground, letting it soak into the red earth. The drum beat softly. Boom. 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 The wind rose, the tree branches shaking, the villagers holding each other, tears on their faces. And then, the wind stopped. The air calmed. And the ancestors smiled. They stepped back, fading into the dawn light, the sky brightening, the world quiet. The drum in my hands grew cool, the carving softening, the glow fading. And for the first time, it was silent. The land was quiet. The ancestors were at peace. The curse was lifted. I sank to my knees, tears streaming down my face, the villagers surrounding me, their hands on my shoulders, their voices rising in a soft song of thanks. Gogo knelt beside me, her eyes bright with tears. "You did it, Themba. The land remembers, and now, it forgives." I looked around, seeing the fig tree standing tall, the graves marked and honored, the children laughing nearby, the people holding each other. And I felt it. Peace. For the first time. If you're still here, still listening, tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is there. Tell me, do you believe that peace can truly come after so much pain? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video, and subscribe, so you don't miss what comes next. Because the drum is quiet now. There is still one final chapter left to tell. The drum is quiet now. And sometimes, in the quiet, I still reach for it, expecting it to beat, to call, to demand. But it does not. Because it is done. After the final ritual, the village felt different. The air was lighter, the wind softer, the mornings brighter. Children played freely near the fig tree, their laughter ringing where once there was only silence. The land had been returned. The graves had been honored. And the ancestors had gone to rest. David kept his promise. He signed the papers, returning the land to the village, to the people whose blood had fed it. And he stayed, walking beside us, building new homes, clearing the fields, planting gardens where bones once lay hidden. Some people forgave him. Some never will. But that is between him and the ancestors. As for me, I stayed. I could have returned to the city, to the noise, to the lights that hide the stars. But my place was here. Because the land had called me. And I had answered. I began teaching the children about the stories of the land, the songs of the ancestors, the ways to honor the past while building the future. They would gather under the fig tree, wide-eyed, asking questions, laughing, sometimes crying. And I would tell them, the land remembers. And it will remember you, too. Gogo passed on quietly one morning, the sunrise painting the sky pink and gold, her breath soft, her eyes peaceful. We buried her under the fig tree, beside the ancestors, placing flowers on her grave, singing her home. And that night, as I sat under the stars, the drum resting beside me, I felt her presence in the breeze, warm, calm. Thank you, Themba. Sometimes, I still dream. I see my grandfather, standing tall, the spear in his hand, the lion skin across his shoulders. But now, he is smiling. You have done well, my son. The land is free. Rest. And I wake up with tears on my face, but they are not heavy anymore. They are light. The drum sits in my home, quiet, resting. And sometimes, when the wind is just right, I can hear it, faintly. Boom. 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 Not a demand. Not a threat. But a reminder. That justice was done. That the ancestors were honored. That the land remembers. And now, it is at peace. Sometimes, people come to me, asking for help with their own land, their own curses, their own ancestors. And I listen. Because I know what it is to carry a weight too heavy for one heart. And I tell them, the land remembers. But it can forgive. As I sit here, under the fig tree, the wind soft, the birds singing, the children laughing in the distance, I know that the story is not really over. Because the land will always remember. And it will always call to those who will listen. If you're still here, still listening, tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is there. Tell me, do you believe that we can heal the wounds of the past, if we have the courage to face them? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, please like this video, and subscribe for more stories that honor where we come from and where we are going. Thank you for being here with me, under the fig tree, as the drum finally goes quiet. May your land remember you kindly. And may you remember to listen when it calls.